I assume that means that the time has come for us to start. Thank you guys for coming to this panel. What we're going to talk about today, I'm Katie, I'm COO at Wavemaker UK, and I'm here with Joe, who is VP of Brand at Trainline. We're going to talk about bridging the saying and doing gap with consumers. So we all know that consumers say one thing, especially in research groups. Yes, I pay into my pension. Yes, I will definitely pay into my pension, and do quite another thing. And actually what we have been finding in this cost of living crisis is that say-do gap is becoming ever wider. So we're going to talk about this now. We're going to talk about it from a category perspective. We're going to talk about it from simplifying the purchase journey. We're going to talk about how at the moment consumers are finding a huge amount of cognitive overload, and how we can simplify those kind of journeys to help them in that way. And we're also going to talk about how we can really tread that fine line between the right type of communications at such a sensitive time in the macro context. So Joe, quickly, do you want to do a quick introduction to you, and then I will fire the first question.
Thank you. It's great to be here, everyone, and really excited to share some thoughts with Katie, with you. I'm VP of Brand at Trainline. I've been there for a couple of years now. Prior to that, Skyscanner and Moonpig, so mainly in digital brands. I kind of want to do this session today with a bit of a lens of this idea that as brand leaders or marketing leaders, we're needing to become athletes, and athletes and are master of our skills of agility and consistency and thinking big, which all sound naturally very opposite to each other, but you kind of need to be able to do all three things. So looking forward to sharing thoughts with you.
And I think this panel is all about contradictions, isn't it? So if we think about travel first as a category, lots and lots of research out there at the moment. There's a big research piece from the end of 2022 from Deloitte talking about how customers or consumers are cutting down on travel, commuting, travel that they don't necessarily need to do. But there is also some really interesting research from a company called the Behavioural Architects. It's a brilliant piece of research that I would recommend everyone has a read of, that talks very much about the present bias. And the present bias is when people who are thinking that the future is too bleak to contemplate seize the day. And they don't think about planning for the future, they think about the now. And we're seeing that. So holiday bookings in the first quarter of this year were 25% up on pre-pandemic numbers, for example. And similarly, people are spontaneously booking travel in a way that they haven't before. So this is really using the athlete in you, isn't it, Joe? Yeah. Because if you just looked at the research of what customers are saying they're going to do, it's very different from what they're actually doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so for us, travel has kind of been through quite a journey over the last few years, as you can imagine. I'm sure you've all had challenges with your travel. And actually the kind of variables upon us are whether it be COVID, working from home, working from anywhere, whether it be industrial action, whether that be rail industrial action or schools and you need to stay at home, etc. There's lots of different things that people have to get their head around. And, for us, if we look at just kind of the Q1 period this year, so January to end of March, and actually to now, we've seen already some seismic shifts in consumer behaviour. And that's just 14 weeks. So at the beginning of this year, people were coming into the year and it was kind of fairly slow in terms of returning back to work. And actually what we saw with the industrial action was that people obviously were uncertain, didn't know if they could travel. And then the cost of living crisis is on top of that. You've got prices going up. So pretty bleak winter, I would say. And that now we've kind of got through a bit of a tipping point where actually there's not such bad press on the cost of living crisis necessarily as we expected. And also, things like industrial action have changed. So users have flipped into a much more optimistic mode. So what was happening last month in terms of you were buying train tickets or travel tickets on the day, you're now buying them 3 weeks in advance. So from a marketing perspective and a messaging perspective, there kind of need to be that athlete of being agile to the changes. But, you know, at the end of the day, you're still trying to build a brand that people trust in and believe in. And it's kind of that juxtaposition with consistency.
And we'll get on to talk about brand. But before we do, I think there's a really interesting point to talk about around pricing and the fact that because of inflation being as it has, consumers have lost their pricing anchors. So there used to always be anchors where people were, well, I know how much a pint of milk is, so I know whether buying it here is expensive or cheap. Now people don't have that because no one has a clue what a pint of milk costs because it's gone up 26% from what it was and fluctuates wildly. And because of this, people are very, very stressed and tired from the cognitive overload of making micro decisions almost continuously all the time. Yet people are also still shopping around hugely. So 34% of people are going to multiple supermarkets to get the best deals. So there is this balance between wanting to simplify but also wanting to get the best deal and therefore complicating their lives to be able to do that. And the kinds of campaigns that are doing really well at the moment are things like the Aldi Price Match campaign that Sainsbury's has been doing because it gives people a familiar anchor. Now, cognitive overload or not, train tickets are one of the most complicated pricing things that I have ever come across, and that's in a normal time. So what are you doing, both in the kind of user experience of Trainline, but also in simplifying this extraordinary minefield of pricing?
Yeah, it is a minefield, I'm not going to lie. So there's more than like 50 million train ticket types you can buy in the UK, believe it or not. Can't believe I know that. And obviously, the different like variables you experience is like you're trying to get from A to B, right? Whether that be the destination, whether you're going to work, seeing a friend, doing something with your family. There's lots of different things that go on. And obviously, for me, train tickets is quite, you're not kind of like, it's not a lifestyle purchase choice. It's kind of more of a necessity, right? It's a transportation mode to get from A to B. And as you said, pricing is really important. Now, we've seen big price hikes in the cost of rail in March. That's generally something that happens on an annual basis anyway. But our job is to take those 50 million train ticket types and what you want to do and help you find that best way of getting it. So we're aggregating all of that content onto one platform. And many of you, show of hands, who uses Trainline? Great.
Bravo, people, bravo, we are doing our jobs.
So I think there's a few challenges. One is, we have products such as Split Save and things like digital rail cards, digital season tickets, all a way of kind of providing better value in an effortless way. But equally, we need to find more like what we call price hacks and use our data and intelligence to find better ways to help people travel. So there'll be some things coming through in the summer within our product that are going to help you pick a better price or better time to travel. And it's just continually looking at the behaviours of consumers and helping them with how they could get there. And believe it or not, there's a lot of things around, rail cards. Sounds like a very boring topic, but there's only 5 million people that have them in the UK, and if you're like under 25, you can pretty much use it on any type of journey and save a third. So the complexity we've got.
I'm closer to my freedom pass.
Yeah, 25. See your rail card? No, sorry. But yeah, it is our job to make it simple for sure, and I think also it's our job to drive change and lead the change in the industry as well. So.
Brilliant. I want to talk about your wonderful world of Trainline because I love the brand that you are building at the moment. And we've done Wavemaker have done a lot of cost of living research, and we've just done our second wave. And what's interesting to see is what people want from the way brands are talking to consumers. No one wants humour. No one wants an escape. People want to be told about deals. They want to be told about loyalty schemes. But looking back to 2008 and looking back to the 2008 recession, some of the most famous brand-defining work came out of that recession. If you look at the Virgin Atlantic work, you look at the Hovis work, do you remember the T-Mobile flash mob? All of those brilliant, big, fame-driving work at a time when consumers probably said the same thing. So how do you balance a sensitive macro context with the fact that you want to build memorable work?
So, I mean, I'm a huge believer in great creativity, and for me, you know, when you've got a fairly, you know, mundane product, to be quite honest, it's a train ticket and it's a user experience about booking and travelling on trains, and you have all of this cognitive load. It's our absolute, you know, it's an absolute necessity, and we owe it to consumers to make it more memorable, because if they don't understand how they might be able to get better price or how they can travel in different ways, if you're trying to just purely compete on very tactical pricing messaging, you're not really going to get there with all that cognitive load. So we really didn't spend a lot of money on brand prior to COVID, and coming out of COVID we've heavily invested in the UK and Europe, and going beyond, and we partner with Wavemaker, and we've just actually recently launched a brand platform called Great Journeys Start with Trainline. We've got a bit of a crazy ad out there, so it's going against the Say Do app. We've got this guy called Steve who goes for a massage and realises that Trainline's enabled the most blissful era the planet has ever seen. So it's completely zany, I think the drum called it. And that...
It's mother. What would you expect?
But it's a wonderful way of bringing something that's quite a very functional message of saving 35% with an app that, you know, helps you travel with more ease and make it effortless in a really fun way. Yeah. And I think we owe it to consumers. We owe it to make it memorable, and actually we owe it to them to make it, you know, stand out if that's what they're looking to achieve. So
yeah, I agree. I think there's one thing saying it in a research group, and a very different thing when you're actually out there looking at the work and seeing what cuts through. And then finally, a topic very close to your heart, sustainability. Research from Group M has shown that 58% of Londoners would be willing to spend more for brands that live by their values and are sustainable. December last year, there was a 53% rise in electric car registrations for that single month alone. But we also keep hearing about people downgrading brands, not doing the nice to haves, really thinking about the essentials. Do you think that means that sustainability is no longer thought of as a nice to have, and that this is now almost a must have as people are choosing brands and thinking about the brands that they support?
I completely agree, it is a must have. I think hopefully many of you have read things like the Elderman Trust Barometer, and you see how, you know, business leaders and businesses themselves have to take accountability for social issues, and people are using or have a lot less trust in government and NGOs and, you know, those kind of practices that drive big societal change. So it is on business leaders and it is on CEOs. That's actually something that people are looking for. Ultimately, also, you have to, in this day and age, you have to be way more responsible for your actions at the end of the day. And I think for us, it's going, okay, what can we authentically do that actually is going to help people and help the climate change initiative? So we launched a platform called I Came by Train last November, where it's basically debranded, so it's not branded Trainline. We debadged everything, and it's purely I Came by Train, because the whole idea is eventually we would like to democratise it as much as possible. It is about basically letting people know that rail is more sustainable than car and plane. It's about 7 times more sustainable in terms of climate CO2 emissions, but also we want to give a feeling of pride in taking the train. So the whole idea is that, you know, what's the best thing you can say when you turn up somewhere? I came by train. And the whole idea there is it has meaning, it has something that kind of behind it really is you made a choice for the planet, you made a conscious choice versus travelling by car or air. Now, I recognise that, you know, on its own, it's a great platform to really raise awareness of transportation methods and being more sustainable. And the campaign itself has done amazingly well. We've got 30% recall, industry standards like 7%. We've got like 15 percentage point uplift in brand awareness for rail being green over a 6-week period. So the numbers were unbelievable. The challenge is also then, how do you make it more accessible for people? How do you make it cheaper? How do you make it more convenient? So the core Trainline brand has to make it more accessible, more convenient, more cost effective. And the I Came by Train platform is about making rail famous for being sustainable. So we did a launch. We managed to reach key stakeholders in government as well. One of them was the rail minister, while he was getting his hair cut, which was handy.
Nice.
And I think that the thing for us now is how do you explode something like that on a huge scale? And we're not pretending to own it. We want to really democratise that. So for us, it's an absolute must.
Amazing. So I don't think I've got time for another question. Obediently looking at my countdown that's there. But I would love to know a top tip for being a business athlete.
Oh, that's a good one. Make your finance department your best friends. I would say.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie.
Really enjoyed that.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Katie and Joe.